Hey guys, George of SoundTraxx here. This week we're just going to talk a little bit about how we take the sounds that are loaded in our decoders and match the model. And today we're going to use this Missouri Pacific SD40 that's sitting here in front of me, and we're going to use it with the Blunami, and we're going to talk about how we figure out what sounds are matched with our models and how to get that. So let's get started. Now guys, when you buy a SoundTraxx decoder, whether it be a Tsunami2, a Blunami, or Econami, it comes preloaded with a collection of different sounds. Now these sounds are going to be specified based on the type of decoder. So for example, the Econami, which is designed as our budget decoder, is going to have a few sounds that are some of the most popular ones that you're going to hear, but they're all going to be mixed into one decoder. So for example, steam, you're going to get 4 exhaust chuffs. Diesels, you're going to get 5 diesel prime movers. And your whistle sounds, bell sounds, things like that, those are all limited. Or when it comes to the Tsunami2 or the new Blunami, now, pun intended, this comes with all of the bells and whistles that SoundTraxx offers, preloaded into the decoders that you can use to select to match your model. But the question is always going to be, how do I know which sounds are for which model? Now, first off, some of our competitors out there will tell you that they have all these hundreds of different profiles to tell you that, well, if you have a UP SD40-2 or if you have a Santa Fe GP38, you want to click this. And the problem with that is that it's very limiting because you're assuming that they're modeling all cases of that GP38, or all of those GP38s sound exactly the same. Now, one of the things that we've done is we've given you the sounds to allow you to go through and make your selections. So how do we do this? So the first thing we want to do is we want to do some internet searching. So let's talk about the Mopac SD40 that's here in front of me. So what I can do is I can go on to the internet, do a quick 30-second to 1-minute search, EMD SD40, and you can usually find a internet page, a web page, or even a Wikipedia, which is sometimes accurate, information that will tell you what the prime mover of an SD40-2 or an SD40 is. So in this case, we're going to find that the SD40 is actually an EMD 645 16-cylinder turbo. Now, when we go to our sound selection references, when we're selecting our sound, now you can go through and you can see in these charts here that the EMD decoder, not the EMD2, is going to have the proper sound. The EMD is going to have the 16-cylinder 645 turbo, whereas the EMD2 is going to have some different variations of that 645 turbo, including a 20-cylinder for the SD45 series, the F45s, FP45, and so on, as well as the 16-cylinder 645F, which is good for the EMD50 series, such as the GP50s and the SD50s. Now, once we have that information, we're going to go ahead and go to our Blunami. Now, I'm going to unmute this Locomotive so that you can hear. Right now, we have a default sound of the EMD 567 non-turbo. But we're going to go ahead and change because we've looked up that an SD40 is a 16-cylinder 645. So we've already got our decoder installed, so we're going to go to our settings menu. We're going to go to sound settings, and the prime mover is considered a main sound. So now you can see that prime mover is our first one listed, and we're going to go ahead and select this as the EMD 645 turbo, and you can hear that sound instantly change. And now you hear that definitive turbo whine of the 645 engine that was included in the SD40s and the SD40-2. Now you can do this with any different locomotive that you have that you're looking to install a decoder into. Now next up, we want to look at this locomotive. We say, well, what kind of horn would you want? Well, sometimes you can go to the historical societies to try to match up different sounds. You can a lot of times take a look at the horn that's actually modeled on the locomotive. And in this case, this is a Leslie RS3LR air horn. So what I can do is I can scroll here. We can go to my air horn list. And you can see that I have 44 different air horns to choose from, including, let's scroll through the list. We have a Leslie S3L, so we select that. We can listen to what that sounds like, because that's going to be of the same family. Now we're going to go to this Leslie RS3L, which is very similar. Let's listen to it. And we also have the Leslie S3LR, which is also of the same Leslie 3 chime. Let's take a listen. You can hear that they're very similar, all three of those, but what this does is this gives you the ability to have 3 different options for a Leslie 3 chime air horn, so that you can have a few different locomotives with the S3LR and a couple of them with the RS3L version of the air horn, and then a couple with the S3. Now, a lot of times you can look at the model, you can do some research by looking at pictures. I have a photograph of a rebuilt locomotive that was a Missouri Pacific GP38 that actually had some sort of single chime air horn mounted on the hood. For whatever reason, it had the single air chime. So this gives you the ability to, again, to match your model based on what you're modeling. So that way you're not always put into these cookie cutter pre-made sound selections. With just a few minutes of research, you can find the different variations. Now I'm going to go ahead and mute our locomotive as we carry on our discussion so that there's not a lot of background sound. Now when we look at our steam locomotives, the steam locomotives are done a little bit differently. The problem is a lot of video that exists out there that might be able to be used to help us identify what that locomotive sounds like may or may not be actually accurate. Now, when you're doing your diesel searches, you can always look at amateur video online, try to find it out. But if you're looking at steam, a lot of these older steam videos have been doctored or edited in such a way to make them more entertaining and more enjoyment to watch. And a lot of times sound was dubbed in. And the editors didn't really care how accurate the sounds were, so they just wanted to make it sound. So when you're watching some of these old videos, I remember watching a Pennsylvania Railroad video from 1945 or something, and you could see a locomotive that they were filming blowing the whistle because steam was blowing out of the whistle. But the editors didn't catch that, and therefore there was no whistle sound. And vice versa, you'll hear whistle sounds when there's no whistles, steam being blown out. Also look closely at your chuff rates because your chuff rates are going to be off by comparison to the video. And so therefore, you can't always trust these older videos online as your guide. So when it comes to steam, what we have to do is we have to look at the cylinder diameter. We kind of look at the size of the cylinders to make sure that they're going to match. Now, in our Tsunami2 and Blunami, we have light, medium, and heavy, and 3 versions of each exhaust. And we also have one for geared locomotives. Now you can go in and listen to each of them, just like we did here with the Blunami with our diesel. You can go in and listen to them, see how they sound, figure out which one looks the right voice to your locomotive. Now in some cases, some of the more modern locomotives, for example, we're going to use the 4014 Big Boy. We actually have exclusive audio recordings of the actual 4014 exhaust chuff available in our Tsunami2 product line. So you can use some of these actual videos that are online posted to use as reference, or use your judgment, see what the locomotive sounds like. And next up, when you're talking about selecting a whistle. Now, whistles in their day were not as standardized as diesels are today. In other words, the Missouri Pacific, for example, because we have this locomotive here in front of us, tended to use the 3-chime Leslie air horns on most of their locomotives. But in the steam era, that wasn't as standardized. A lot of times if a railroad went back to a builder, say Alco or Baldwin or somebody, to build a steam locomotive, the whistle that they used prior may or may not have been available anymore. Or they changed vendors. So they had different variations of whistles. And even then, once they get shopped, because steam locomotives had to go in for major servicing on a more regular basis than diesels are, which was part of the reason why diesels won out. But during those shopping, a lot of times in cleaning the whistles, they didn't always get back on the same locomotive. So you could see 3 locomotives of the same class, and all 3 of them may have a different whistle. And also, a lot of times engineers had their own whistles, and so when they were assigned to train, they would climb up and put their own whistles on the locomotive, throwing the railroad's whistle down, and then run the locomotive through town and on their run. So this gives you a lot more flexibility to pick a whistle that you like, or one that looks close to what you've got. A lot of times in smaller scales, these whistles are harder to determine whether it's a 5-chime, a 6-chime, or a 3-chime, and so therefore it gives you a little bit more flexibility to be able to choose a whistle that you like versus one that absolutely ran on it. And case in point, if any of you guys are out there watching on YouTube, you can search YouTube for Union Pacific 3985, Illinois Central. And you'll find that Steve Lee, once upon a time, put a Illinois Central 3-chime whistle on the 3985 for one of its run. And so therefore, it didn't have its iconic normal step-top 3-chime whistle. So in addition to all of these different sound selections, we've given you a lot of tools in your decoder to help you modify the sounds. So if you don't want every SD40 to sound exactly the same, we do have a 7-band equalizer. So again, we can go to our settings, sound settings, and you can go to the equalizer right here, and you can see that we can preset a different selection of different equalizer settings, or we can enable a user adjustable, which will allow you to live real time be able to make adjustments so that you can make these sounds a little different. And among the equalizer, we have other things like for reverb sounds, so you can add echo and reverberations to the different sounds so that you can hear different tones, especially when it comes to whistle and air horns. You can have those echoing and reverberating a little bit more than, say, the diesel prime mover. Now, the last thing we talk about here in this case is volume settings. Now, when we come in here, every sound effect has its own volume control. So as we're looking through the list, this particular locomotive doesn't have dynamic brakes. And so therefore we can create a separate locomotive profile by just taking the dynamic brake volume, which I'm not finding. Let's go to other sounds. There's dynamic brake right there. So now on this particular model, we're going to take the dynamic brake volume, set it to 0, therefore creating a new profile. Now, without adjusting volume controls, the SoundTraxx Tsunami2 and Blunami decoder lines have over 2.2 billion with a B, possible sound combinations. Once you factor in audio tools such as the equalizer, volume settings, things like that, the number becomes infinite because you can match your models the way you want them to run. Now, this is just a sampling of a way you can adjust your Tsunami2 and Blunami decoders. Now, some of these tools are also available in the Econami, such as the equalizer and volume settings. You do not have reverb in the Econami, so that's one of the reasons that you'd want to go with the Tsunami2 or the Blunami. Now, you can also buy the Blunami, and it comes with this app that you can download for free onto your device that allows you to make your changes using the visual graphic interface so that you can push buttons, check boxes, look at menus, things like that, rather than having to worry about CV numbers. But best of all, when it comes to operation, it gives you the name of what each of these buttons do rather than trying to remember that F15 sets the handbrake on my diesel. Now guys, that's all I've got for you today. There's a lot of great tools built into the decoder that gives you the full flexibility to make your locomotive sound the way you want it to. So for more information, visit our website, SoundTraxx.com. Be sure to download the user's guides for the SoundTraxx Blunami, Econami, and the Tsunami2, and read through there, starting with Chapter 1. It explains what the sound features are so that you know what you're adjusting. And also, if you like this video, please give us a like. Also, subscribe to our channel. We really want to make sure we're reaching all of you guys, and then that way you're notified when we post new content like this. And if you have a suggestion for a video, give us an email at sales@soundtraxx.com, and we'll try to get a video shot on your topic. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.